All right, welcome everyone. I am talking to Candace Dixon. Candace is the host of the Marketing for Fitness Coaches podcast. Candace and I had a chat probably 3 to 4 months ago, and that was a great podcast. I know that I got some really good feedback from coaches that listened to frameworks that were like, "Hey, that was really good. Need more of that." And the reason why I think coaches need more of that is because everyone's lost in this whole like marketing world and how do I market myself as a coach and how do I do that honestly? How do I do that transparently? All that stuff. So today we are going to be talking about specialization. Specialization from a coaching standpoint, as well as specialization from a marketing standpoint. And Candace, you can kind of get into that and talk about what comes to mind or kind of your lens when you think about that concept of specialization. But I'll start with, from a coaching standpoint, the stance that I'm going to take today in terms of like, why is specialization important? We'll walk through some frameworks and stuff like that. But at a macro level, specialization is important because you have to understand who you are as a coach. You have to understand who you're serving, and you have to understand the delivery method in which you're serving your clients. So with that being said, Candace, before we get into framework number one, give us just a little bit of a rundown of like where your head goes with this concept of specialization from when you think about it from a marketing standpoint.
I recently, as we're recording this, just released an episode last week called "You Are Not the Niche, You Are the Niche's Hero." And the whole premise was just addressing there's a debate in the marketing world, and I think amongst fitness coaches, like, do I need to niche? Am I the niche as the coach? And I wanted to sort of myth bust that thought because I think it's kind of a scapegoat that we can use. Like, I'm the personality. This is my life. I'm creating content around all the things that I'm interested in. And therefore, I am the niche, and it doesn't confine me to any specificity when it comes to my content. And I think that's a very poor strategy in today's market because the market is so crowded. There is the supply and demand from a content production to content consumption standpoint is so out of balance that if we take that approach from as a business owner, we are not going to be effective. Like today, we know, we talked about this in our last episode, the algorithm is different now, right? It's not dependent on your followers. It's the content itself that you publish does the targeting for you. So you need to be very targeted and very strategic about the content that you create so that it can be delivered to the potential client that you want to serve, and that they have the ability to see themselves in the content that you're creating and recognize that you have the real potential of supporting them in their journey from wherever they are today to wherever they want to be. And your role is to build trust. Like the ultimate aim that we're trying to achieve in our content is aiming for that trust. And that trust comes from consistency, compounding over time, and you really knowing that audience super deeply. And the framework that I gave them in that episode was think about your niche as this mix. It's the overlap of who you coach and the problem that you solve for them. So it's the person, the problem, and the promise that your coaching delivers. And that becomes kind of the basis of all of the content that you create. So from an online perspective, when we're thinking about client acquisition, we have to be very specific so that the content can connect, can break through, can deliver the things that we need to deliver to build that trust and allow that client to be in control of the buying process and know that like we're the right coach for them. So our content is essentially helping the sales process. It's like they're pre-selling themselves on you as the right coach for them by consuming your content. And in order for that to happen, your content has to be very strategic and very targeted. So I talk about a niche as like a very powerful way for them to lead in their content creation and their marketing. But I know that that's something that it's different from the practice that they're building, right? They may coach a lot of different types of people, but is there a way to unify that through maybe not just demographics, but it could be psychographics, like what is the mindset that someone is in? But we have to be very clear on who that person is, all the things that we can know about them, try to know them better than they might know themselves, understand the problems that we are specifically solving for them with our coaching, and then the promise that we're delivering, and be very clear about that.
I think that's just a natural bridge into this first framework that we want to talk about. And this framework is this concept or idea of to be a master at something, there has to be like constraint in that thing. Let's take this out of fitness coaching for a second and just take it into, other professions, right? It's like you won't meet a brain surgeon that is also a great dentist, right? You won't meet a great dentist that is also a great reconstructive surgeon, right? So it's like that seems so obvious, right? But when we start to look at it from a fitness coaching standpoint, there's so many things, there's so many ways to deliver this product of fitness coaching. What I'm saying when I say that this concept of like mastery or just getting really good at something over time, you have to focus on something very specifically. So we talked about it a little bit before we hit record here. We talked about OPEX, right? And we talked about coaches that come in through the OPEX method to become CCP coaches. And the very first thing that we talk about on that kickoff call is we say, hey, this approach that we're talking about over the next 10 weeks, it is all butt up against the expectation that you're going to do one-to-one individual design fitness coaching. And we do that very specifically. Let's get away from the ideological stuff and like, well, we believe it's the best, blah, blah, blah. It's like we do that very specifically because it is near impossible to teach an approach that is great and right for everyone. You know what I mean? So it's like, we're not saying, hey guys, come in to this education and we're going to teach you to be the absolute best on the floor CrossFit coach with 15 people in front of you. Like we like they're not going to walk away with that, right? So we have to make a very intentional decision to say, hey, what approach are we teaching against? Okay. So naturally, a lot of coaches that come in through CCP, through the OPEX method, they're like, hey, I want to refine and professionalize my practice around this concept of individual design coaching. There's one coach, there's one client. I'm coaching them. I'm giving them their own individual program design, lifestyle design, nutrition, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I mean when I say this concept of mastery or getting really good at something requires some constraint or focus. So this is that whole concept of like, just keep going deep into something specifically instead of just trying to be, I think there's a lot of utility in being like a jack of many trades, but you can't be a jack of all trades and be really great at all of those things, right? So I'm coming from this from a standpoint of like, get really niche to use your term or get really specialized in the way that you're coaching people. I build my efficiencies and how I design training programs inside of this model of coaching. Okay. So that's the way that I'm looking at it. Having feedback loops that are predictable. I do the same assessment with every single client that comes in. I'm specializing in this assessment. Do I care if it's the best assessment in the entire world? No. All I care about is that I am very consistent. I'm specializing here and my feedback loop is very predictable. So now I can spot when I see a quote unquote flaw, right? Because I've done this thousands of times. I'm not like, individualizing it for every person that comes in. I'm specialized in my methodology and how I coach, right? But now I think the interesting thing is like, how do you take this concept? Let's pretend that all coaches agree with what I'm saying right now. Take this concept and talk about how do you market against that?
And it's interesting because it's like we were talking a little bit about how coaches come into the ecosystem and everyone has a bias or like a preference in terms of like what they enjoy most or a style of fitness they enjoy most or that they've gone through their own personal transformation in and they're super passionate about that. So it's like they want to communicate how effective that was for them. And they want to, they almost take their own fitness journey and kind of attract people who are excited about the same things that they're excited about. So from an ID perspective, that makes a lot of sense because they've likely most coaches who come into our ecosystem have either been coached by another OPEX coach or they've been influenced by an OPEX gym or an OPEX coach. They admire the business of an OPEX coach and they're like, I want to achieve that too, right? It makes a lot of sense. You see success, you want to try to emulate it. And of course, you're going to make it your own in the best way that you possibly can, but you're trying to emulate something like that. And I think, you just have to go through the steps to identify what do you enjoy, what do you like who do you like delivering for, what problems do you like solving. Imagine you were having a day of consults and you had 10 consults booked that day. What kind of person would be in front of you and the conversation that you could be having 10 times that day and not get bored or not get like burnt out on that. Like you have to have that real excitement about it. So it's like everyone's not your ideal client. You're going to be very passionate about a specific aspect of fitness that you're going to attract people into. And I think that that's normal. But I just think the clarity around what is that specific challenge that you love solving more than anything, and getting really clear on that is a great way to start.
Just because I want to make sure that we're getting like really specific and tactical with each one of these frameworks. Give me or give everyone an example of what you just said. So just think about a coach, a scenario where it's like, they're actually, let's say that they're doing individual design, 20 clients, their aim is to get to 35, and they're coaching a particular type of client, whether they realize it or not. What are the steps necessary to realize who your target market is? I'm using that word. You didn't say it, but I'm
Yeah.
just going to pull that one out. Like who that target market is, and getting really specific to that target market. Like give me just an
Yeah.
example of
I mean, this came
how
up
that can play out.
actually yesterday on the mentorship call, right? We had a coach who, at the end of a lecture, proposed the question of, hey, I'm currently working with several women who are in midlife and they're experiencing, menopausal, premenopausal symptoms. And they're experiencing a lot of friction in their fitness journey because of this stage of life that they're in. And I want to be able to better serve that group because I'm passionate about it. She happens to be a woman herself, also like entering this phase of life, and wants to be able to get really clear about how she can better support these women. And so that's a perfect example because obviously that's a target market that has a lot of volume in it and opportunity, but it's a segment of the population that has very specific challenges that you would need to go deep on to be able to connect with her emotionally, empathize with the things that she's going through, be able to speak to the frustrations that she's having on a regular basis, and encourage her that there is this opportunity for her to navigate this phase of life and still thrive and not feel frustrated. So if she were creating content where she were talking about athletic performance and solving very specific athletic performance challenges, that's not going to meet that woman in midlife who's just dealing with like, I'm struggling to sleep. I'm having hot flashes. I'm unmotivated. I feel awful. In the gym, I don't feel as strong as I used to be, or maybe I've never even entered the gym, but I know that I need to be thinking about resistance training at this phase of life when I'm in a place where my hormones are out of whack and I'm probably starting to, have that entropy phase affecting me more appropriately. So there's a lot of correlation there. Like from a coaching practice perspective, there's a lot that you have to dig into to be able to coach that woman to the best of your ability. But then from a content perspective, there's also a lot that you need to really understand to be able to connect with her through content so that she can know that you can actually meet her needs.
That was like a layer deeper than what I offered to start, right? Because I talked about this concept of like your model, right? Like I do individual design. You're now going a level deeper, and you're talking about, okay, finding a niche within the model that you're coaching, which I think is awesome. But well, let me ask you this. Do you think every coach needs to do that?
I think it depends on your business model, right? If
Yeah.
you're an in-person coach and you have more of a localized strategy, or if you're working at a gym where there's a group of clientele that you have access to and you're connecting with new clients that way, that's probably a different entry point. But from an online content acquisition standpoint, that focus and clarity needs to be there to be able to have your content connect with that woman and serve her, for her to be able to spend enough time with you to trust you and believe that you're the right coach for her to want to reach out and inquire with you.
Yeah.
So I think they're slightly different, but even in the context of, let's say you were in a gym and you were working with a broader base of clients, and this woman came to you for service, like from a practice standpoint, to serve her effectively, you're going to have to go deeper
Yeah.
in knowing how to serve her.
I don't know. Did we talk about this in our last podcast? The term like etching your niche keeps coming into my mind. Did we talk about that before?
I
Or
don't,
was
I
that your
don't,
last?
I don't think I've used that word, but I like it.
Okay. So let's talk about really quick before we move to framework two. Like, what are some things that have to be present for you to feel good, or for a coach to feel good about etching that niche, right? Like I wrote down a couple things as you were talking through that example of the coach yesterday. Number one, there's interest. The coach is interested in that niche. Like there's something there where they hear that issue that that person's having or whatever the case is. And they're like, I want to dive deeper into that. Right. So that was number one that came to mind. Number two, they're knowledgeable, right? Or they're willing to increase their knowledge in that area. I know that kind of goes without being said, but I think that would probably be a qualifier to say, hey, I want to actually dig in and etch this niche. And then number three, I think that there has to be some kind of gap, right? Like, and we'll talk about building trust next, but there has to be a gap in the quote unquote market where it's like, hey, this is my niche and I'm choosing this to be my niche because not every coach in the world is choosing this to be their niche right now, right? So an example would be like, coaches 12 months ago that were like, I want to etch my niche in high rocks. It's like they probably stood out because it was fairly like new to a lot of the general population public. If a same coach like starts that today, they're probably, going up against thousands of other coaches that are also calling that their niche. So those are those are like the three things. I don't know if you want to comment on those, agree with them, disagree with them. There has to be interest on the coach's side. There has to be knowledge on the coach's side, and there has to be a gap in the market for that to be like a quote unquote solid niche for that coach.
Maybe the gap could be like, maybe it's this wide versus this wide, because like
Yeah.
there probably are a lot of coaches, like you said, high rocks, or a lot of coaches who are specializing in supporting athletes that want to have success in that specific sport. So there's I think it's Marty Newmeyer, old school marketing strategist, has this like better, different grid. And so just because a market is starting to have some saturation, or people kind of go, oh, well, it's too crowded. Like, is there space for me? Can I break through in that market? It's like, well, when markets mature, you have to be more strategic, more focused, and communicate why you're better and different for that specific person. Right. So just because something is crowded, I don't want people to think that they can't choose that as something that they specialize in. You just have to get really clear on how do you deliver for that audience in a better and different way, so that they are attracted to want to work with you over someone else.
Yeah. I mean, I would call that like, or I would liken that to like, if the market is crowded, there's a larger need of like the knowledge piece, or I don't know, the visibility piece. Those can kind of go hand in hand, I think. That has to do this as the market saturates, right? It's like what we tell coaches when it's like, hey, there's a saturation in the market in fitness coaches, right? How do you create your own value within that market, although the fitness coach market is saturated? Like there has to be a differentiator somewhere in there. There has to be a lever that's pulled. Sometimes that lever is knowledge. Sometimes that lever is results, whatever the case is. But the more saturated something is, I think you have to really focus on separating yourself from that saturation more effectively.
And I like where you started, because being an ID coach in itself is a separator, right? If we think
Mhm.
about all the ways that people, I don't know, the last 10 years, probably like COVID beyond, it became more popular or more normal for people to pursue online coaching as a solution to their fitness needs.
Like individual design on its face is actually a pretty solid separator, assuming that you can do it, you can coach it effectively.
Yeah. I think where I was going to go with that is that people have had like probably pretty poor experiences. Like they assume that everyone has their own assumptions about what is it going to mean when I sign up with a coach. Even if I sign up for a template, I'm being sold some kind of a promise, right? So I'm expecting a certain outcome to happen. And likely if I wasn't working with an ID coach and I was just signing up for a template, I might have, we used to talk about this a lot, like we'll be here when the newbie gains wear off. Like you might have a little bit of progress just because you're making lifestyle changes and you're making positive changes that would impact a desired fitness outcome, but they may or may not be sustainable because they're not designed for your specific stage of life or your schedule or your daily rhythm or all the things that we talk about in why ID is better. But the client on the other end, they may not be aware. They just have this assumption on what online coaching is based on the experiences that they've had. And most likely, they probably haven't had the best experiences, hence why they're looking for a better solution and consuming your content as a coach. So you communicating what is the ID service? How is it different from what they might have experienced? How is it going to help them achieve the results that they maybe didn't actually achieve or sustain with the previous things that they've had or the previous things that they've tried? But I think that's why that clarity is so important, because when you know who you're serving and you've done the research to investigate, or you've had, 20 to 30 discovery calls with potential clients, and you're asking them, well, what have you tried before? Why didn't it
Yeah.
work? Why are you not still doing it? Then you're able to say, well, here's how I'm different. Here's how the service that I'm delivering is different, and why I can guarantee that we're going to get through this together and you're going to have an outcome that you can sustain and are happy with.
Let's go to our second framework. And I think it's natural because some of these pieces we've kind of already hit. The second piece that we want to talk about is this concept of we're going to build trust with the end consumer, the client, the market, whatever that is, the more clear we are. And the reason why this thought or concept came to mind was that if we're hyper focused on something, we could be more clear on that thing, right? A really obvious example of that is like the fitness coach example, right? It's a lot different to say, hi, I'm a fitness coach and I coach you in your fitness versus, hi, I'm a fitness coach and I really want to highly focus and specialize on making you feel better in whatever phase of life that you're in or whatever your goals might be. So to that example, it's like, you're a woman, you're, middle aged or over, and you're going through some hormonal changes, right? Just using that example yesterday. And some things that I thought about when I was thinking about this was like, why would a coach not be clear, right? Why would a coach not be clear? Because I think we could all agree, like, let's always try to be as clear as possible. I think we're not clear or we hedge when we're uncertain. So before we can be clear, before we can start talking about specializing in something, we probably have to like have some experience in that thing. We have to like do that thing to feel confident that we are, willing to make the decision that we are going to specialize in this thing and that we are going to have complete clarity, maybe not complete clarity, but a lot more clarity in whatever it is that we're doing as a coach. And when we don't have that, I think that we kind of like, and I just keep using this, or this word hedge just keeps coming to mind. It's like, if we're unsure, we just hedge, right? We're like, oh no, I can work with everyone. Oh no, I can do this or I can do that. Versus like, oh no, my goal for you is X, right? Or, hey, I really want to work with this type of client. That takes a little bit of courage, right? To like dive in and to specialize into something because you're putting your neck on the line a little bit because you're saying to the market, you're saying to that client, I can help you in this thing because it's what I do, right? So I think when coaches when coaches aren't really clear there might be a lack of confidence. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Like you have to like earn confidence, right? Like and sometimes you're just like kind of going with the flow, coaching a bunch of different type of people and then ultimately through that process you might figure out what you want to ultimately specialize in, whether that is a model, whether that is a psychographic, a demographic, whatever it is. And this other thing that came to mind was like, okay, well, why would you want clarity, right? Why would you want to really focus on specialization to build trust in your clientele? And I think this kind of starts to bleed into the marketing aspect of things. But it's like, if I do the same thing that everyone else does, I am the same as everyone else, right? So there's some utility from a trust standpoint to specialize in what you do, your model, your aim, whatever the case is, because I think people are going to be more likely to get on board with that. They're going to be more likely to trust you out of the gate because they can kind of know what to expect from you because you've told them what they can expect. So what do you think from that standpoint of, being really clear to build trust? I'm talking about it more so from like a client standpoint, but I think you'd speak better from like a market standpoint.
I mean, it's interesting because with anything, like think about this when you're like, I don't know, if you go to school, you study something, you graduate, you're like, I don't know if I want to pursue this career for the rest of my life. You might dabble in a few things, do some internships, get some experience, and then all of a sudden you find the thing that you're like, wow, okay, I'm good at this. I think it's the confidence competency loop kind of situation as well, where it's like, I have some interest, I gain some experience, I have some clarity, I really enjoy this. I want to go further. And that's not to say that that can't evolve, but you're at an advantage if you can gain that clarity faster with from an online marketing perspective with content, because there's a lot of factors. Content as an asset compounds, but that takes a lot of time for that interest. Like if we think about it from a financial perspective, like everyone says, start investing when you're young, and keep investing, just even if it's small pieces over time, keep investing. It's not the interest itself that is the has the power. It's the time, right? That creates the power for you to have the financial benefit of investing. Same thing with career choices, same thing with specialization. So the earlier we can get to a place of clarity, the more work we can put in, and the more work we put out into the world, the more that can compound and start working harder for us. But in the beginning, when you don't know, like you just need a lot of experience. So it might be something where it's like, this discussion actually came up on Behind the Design this week when we were talking about online versus remote. And the two guys, our OPEX coaches, were saying, they really believe that you need to be on the gym floor before you start pursuing remote coaching, because you gain so much coaching capacity working with a lot of different people on the floor and knowing how to manage that experience on the floor before you have to go online. And then you have a whole new set of problems that you have to manage, but without the context of what you had to solve for on the floor, it makes it really challenging to be able to handle a whole new set of problems. So gaining the clarity, gaining the experience, like you're going to have to do that work. So maybe it is taking on a handful of different types of clients in the beginning to learn what you enjoy most, what you're most effective at, where you want to go deeper in. But then once you have that clarity, like really dialing in and getting focused there. And from a content perspective, not only does content take time to become a powerful asset for you, but it also takes a lot of time for you to get good at the whole content game, right? So like putting in those reps over time, you get better at presenting yourself and your solutions and your process in a way that connects to that ideal viewer over time. So yeah, I mean, starting early, it's like the best time to start was always yesterday. The second best time is today. So we just go. But that's not to say that you're going to be stuck here. It's just that maybe this is also a good thing to say, like not being influenced too much by trends that may be fleeting. Obviously, something like High Rocks, I'm not saying that that's a trend that's going to like go away, but it probably has a lifespan. If I compare it to 10, 15 years ago when like Spartan races were all the rage, it's probably like a very equivalent thing. No one's really talking about prepping for a Spartan race as much anymore. There isn't as much interest in that. So maybe if the High Rocks thing was something you were passionate about, go deeper into that, to why you're passionate about it. Are you really passionate about endurance sports? Are you really passionate about concurrent training? Are you really passionate about just like setting a clear goal and achieving a kind of competitive outcome as a way of making progress? Like there's probably something that is a little bit deeper that isn't the trend of the thing that you specialize in, that gives you a little bit more freedom and clarity.
Yeah, that what you just said, that last piece was very well said. And that's what I was thinking, right? Where it's just like, I don't think that trends are necessarily bad unless the trend is the end all be all, right? So it's like to that point of what you're saying, Candace, it's like I know a lot of coaches that are just really fired up to help people meet their maximum physical potential. And they jump on, and I don't even mean this in a bad way. They jump on these trends because it's another opportunity for them to help someone meet their maximum physical potential. So, maybe it was, half marathons in, the early 2000s. And then by the mid 2000s, it started to be something like CrossFit. And then a couple years later, it was Spartan races. And then a couple years later, maybe they dove deeper into like something specific that was a part of like the CrossFit piece. So they started coaching weightlifting. And now they're like, hey, I have a couple High Rocks clients, right? Obviously, there needs to be like knowledge in all of those disciplines. But I know plenty of coaches that have dabbled in a lot of different disciplines and have had a lot of really good success with their clients because they were like, in this season of my coaching life, I'm going to focus on this thing. I'm going to specialize, even if it's for 3 years or 5 years, I'm going to specialize in learning and knowing everything I can within this discipline. I think we saw that very beautifully when coaches did that in CrossFit, right? Coaches like really specialized in this CrossFit thing. And the unintentional consequence of that was they learned so many things that were within this one sport that they could transfer over and get even more specific in another sport. We saw it a lot with like weightlifting, right? And we saw it a lot with rehabilitation from like intense fitness, right? So I think CrossFit is a really good example of coaches jumping on that trend, quote unquote, and then coming out of that with so much knowledge, right? That helped us a lot, right? Like, we dove really, really deep into CrossFit. Like, how do we understand this thing? How can we understand how to make someone better concurrently at so many different things, right? What are the things that really matter? What are the principles in this chaos, right? Like that really challenged us, me specifically. That really helped me diving deep into that world for all those years I was in that world. So really well said on that last piece.
I think too, like the thing to an easier way to think about this is like we're wired to help solve problems for people. I'm solving marketing problems for our business. You're solving strategic decisions around like where we go in the business. As a coach, you're helping someone solve a very specific problem. Like they want to achieve this thing, they don't know how to get there. You're helping them get there from A to B. Clients have so much choice today. Like they open up their phones and there's unlimited opportunity of a coach that they can select. And they're smarter, they're savvier, they're doing the research, and they're like, okay, this is the thing I'm struggling with right now. And I want to work with someone who knows how to solve that thing so well. And I've seen them solve it with other people, and I've seen those people have long-term results and success. And so that's the mindset that they're in when they're researching and coming across content that is inspiring to them. They're looking for whatever pain or friction or desire that they're currently sitting with. And that's the thing that has their obsession right now, that has their attention. So when they go online to consume content, they're looking for the thing that's answering the questions that are in their mind or the questions they don't even know they have yet, right? They're just like wanting to find that thing. So as a coach, if you know that, you can use that to your advantage. Like what are the things that are keeping them up at night? If they're can't sleep and they're on their phone scrolling, like what are they looking for? And can you answer that?
Let's go to the next one. Next framework that I want to talk about. I actually want you to kick this one off if you don't mind, Candace. This is this whole concept of like evidence building authority. And where my head was with that, Candace, is like evidence is, let's stick to results. It's very, very important for a coach to always think about, am I actually getting results with the people that I'm working with? Like that is the most important thing at the end of the day. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how great you are at marketing. You better be getting results for the people that you're working with, at least most of them, right? So how can specificity from a marketing standpoint be improved when thinking about this framework, getting results and building authority through those results from a marketing standpoint?
I mean, we talk about this a lot inside the method. And I think we touched on this in our last collab episode on like the 2025 marketing strategy. 10, 15 years ago, if you were a coach online and you were just able to be successful because you had knowledge that people didn't have access to. And today, like the knowledge is a commodity. Like anyone can go to AI and get their questions answered. But what they're looking for is perspective that they align with, like shared beliefs that they align with. They're wanting to connect with someone who has those same shared beliefs and can help them shift maybe the self-limiting beliefs that they have in their own mind. Think about the outcome that they're trying to achieve from a fresh perspective that they're actually going to believe in and buy into. So we talked about perspective, connection, and proof. And if you don't have those results, the flood of AI content, the fact that influencers are all online, everyone is saying that they can do anything, or you don't know if you're consuming content that is like real or AI anymore. You don't know if the person is just regurgitating something that they read from AI. So when you're investing in creating long form content and you're able to just hold a conversation around the topic you coach on and show the process and show the proof over and over and over again, it's a lot easier for you to break through that sort of trust deficiency that's starting to occur, right? Because it's hard to believe and take someone at their word face value nowadays because there's so many easy ways to kind of like fake the knowledge, right? You have 20-something life coaches who claim to be experts on, midlife when they're in their 20s and they've never actually experienced it, or, maybe they've helped someone through it to some capacity, but they don't have the lived experience and the proof to demonstrate that they can actually help someone in that scenario for the most part. They haven't gone through it themselves. And a lot of coaching is navigating someone through something that you've actually experienced, right? Like in the OPEX method, you have all of the coaches go through their own internal journey as part of the initial phase of the curriculum. And you always tell them, don't write something for a client that you haven't actually done yourself, because you need to be able to feel what this feels like so that you can prescribe it well and coach it well. And I think it's the same thing in your content. Like, you shouldn't be creating content about something that you don't have the expertise in, that you don't have the proof in, right? You wouldn't be trusting me to grow our business from a marketing perspective if you didn't believe that I could do it. If you didn't know that if I couldn't demonstrate to you that I hadn't had the success in the past. And I think buyers, consumers, potential clients, they are waking up to this because they've had these negative experiences with fitness solutions they've tried that have not met their expectations. So it is even more challenging today to, I don't want to say we need to convince someone, but we need to be able to demonstrate our ability to deliver in a very real way over and over and over again to build that trust.
The more that we specialize, the more that we can understand how well or not our results actually are, right? So it's like the more we do something over and over and over again, the more likely that we're going to produce repeatable outcomes or results. Again, like I always say this, right? Like, especially in this model of individual design, it's like every person that you're coaching is a brand new N equals one. So don't make it harder on yourself, right? Imagine coaching every single person, every new person as another N equals one, and then also coaching them in a different way. By a different way, I don't mean like don't individualize it for them. I just mean like your approach, right? I assess in this way. I consult in this way. I write training programs in this way, so on and so forth. If we're changing all of those variables at one time, when it doesn't work, we don't know why it didn't work, right? So like closing the loop on like specialization and how can specializing in your coaching practice create more repeatable results? I think it's obvious, right? But that's not to say like if what you're specializing in, whether that is your approach or your methodology, whatever the case is, if you see in front of you that it's not repeating or it's not ending with repeatable results, then you got to shift something, right? Don't be hard headed. Shift your model, shift your method, shift the way that you do things, shift your delivery, whatever it is, you have to shift it. But I think a lot of coaches will understand this. Don't change 15 things at a time, because if you change 15 things at a time, you don't know what worked when you start to see those results. I said coaches and I thought about it. Candace, you say that all the time from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
Let's keep variables as tight and succinct as possible and only try to change one at a time so we know, or we have more confidence in what variable that we shifted worked or didn't work, right? So I think that's a very global principle, but that's why I think specialization is really, really important. I mean, we could talk about results for a really long time. I think it all flows back to this, right? We have to have evidence that what we're doing is actually working, not evidence only for your client or for the market, but you also have to have evidence for yourself, right? I think that's really, really important. So I don't know. I would just urge coaches to just think about that. Am I actually producing results with my clients? Like, results shouldn't only be a feeling. Okay. Am I objectively moving my clients forward? Sometimes results are a feeling, right? I want to feel better. I want to feel more confident, whatever the thing is, right? So I get that, but you can't live on that, right? Like, just make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever your methodology, whatever your approach is, that you have that evidence of creating results. And then this flowing to the marketing side, Candace, which you've been hitting on, it's like that is only going to help you, right? Because that evidence is going to create some authority, and that's going to go to framework number two and create some trust. And then it's all going to wrap around this framework number one. It's like, okay, this is why it's worth specializing in something, so I can improve the chances of me possibly getting closer to mastery in this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Even from a coaching method perspective, like, we're saying specialize in the style of coaching that you deliver, specialize in the way in which you deliver, like the systems in which you deliver, and the type of client which you deliver results for, just continuing to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think as the market gets more and more mature, it just requires you to start with more focus, even more than it did 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you probably could have, oh, I just do online fitness coaching. I work with everyone. And that was okay because online fitness coaching was new. Now, online fitness coaching is not new, and there's a lot of choice. And for you to be able to break through, that further clarity is required. It made me think of another example, though, because it kind of goes back to once you specialize in the system or the method in which you're delivering fitness, that's based on the principles and the frameworks that you teach inside the OPEX method. So they have this core competency that could be applied to a lot of scenarios. So it made me think, obviously, right now, there's a huge influx of conversation around peptides and GLP-1s. But we know that regardless of if our clients decide to use or not use those things, the success that they have in using those things or in sustaining the results from using those things are very dependent on the lifestyle behaviors that they learn, adopt, and sustain going through that process. So as an ID coach or as an OPEX coach who has mastered this set of principles and you know these basic lifestyle guidelines and you know how to start small and progress them, like that's an opportunity for you to see, okay, like I specialize in coaching the whole person, not just their exercise, but their nutrition and their lifestyle. And it's an individualized service that's going to meet them where they're at today and take them to where they want to go. This is a decision that is in front of everyone right now. There's an opportunity for you to take that trend and enter the conversation with a fresh perspective and be able to support people who are thinking about that decision and or have made that decision in a very powerful way. But you're not necessarily like changing what you do, but you're taking what you've mastered and how you deliver in a specialized fashion and applying it to a real world scenario that's happening right now and being able to enter the conversation with a fresh perspective and connect and show the proof.
So let's all specialize.
What,
I think
where did you start, Carl? When you started, well, because obviously you came out of military and into coaching and opened gyms. Was CrossFit the first entry point for you?
No. I started way before that. I started coaching more so in the. Do you mean like what did I specialize in when I started?
Yeah,
I'd say like the niche that I've held on to throughout most of that time was figuring out what makes people tick, and understanding how to get that person where they wanted to go while also being a part of the process and helping them understand where I thought they needed to go and come into agreement on that stuff. So a lot of like psychological stuff kind of bled into that and all of that. So I don't know. I still look at like fitness coaching and program design and all that stuff as like a medium to connect in a much larger and more substantial way with people. And I think a lot of people actually look at that, taking myself out of the equation. I think a lot of people in other professions use their professions to help people and to connect with people. And their profession is only a medium in how to do that. And once I like realized that was like not my niche, not that I was like unbelievable at it or anything, but it's what I really enjoyed. It made coaching a lot funner for me because like my aim was so clear.
It's like all of that lived experience has built you to this place where like you now are just obsessed about sharing these frameworks that help people think differently, build their confidence in their ability to do what they're doing by using proven frameworks and principles. So it all builds. That angle of performance kind of carries through in all as well. So there's evolution over time in terms of if we're like looking at those like specific niches or segments that you were focused on that like progressively built. But if you look at like the body of work over your career, which has led you to the place that you are now, there's a lot of through line in there, which of course you wish that you could have uncovered that back then, but you had to go through all the steps and to be able to deliver it now. It's a challenge because it's like we're asking people to sort of like fast track. And sometimes you can't fast track the lived experience. You just got to go through the reps and like put in the work, but trying to always aim for that element of clarity and focus so that there is a through line that comes out at the end.
We need to enjoy what we're doing. We need to be satisfied. We need to have satisfaction through what we're doing. And foundationally, there needs to be a great amount, and the great amount is relative, but there needs to be meaning behind what we're doing, right? So we need to enjoy it. It needs to be satisfying, and there needs to be meaning. I stole that from, I don't know if you've read any of Arthur Brooks' work, but he talks about like the macronutrients of happiness. Oh. And those are the three, right? It's enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. So we've been talking about that a lot. Like those things, they've been like in our language over the years. But I started reading his stuff and I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me because he is able to articulate it much more effectively than I was ever able to articulate it So I'm going down like that rabbit hole right now with some of his stuff. But to your point, the reason why I thought about that, Candace, is because you said like the lived experience. None of this stuff means anything unless it means something to us, right? So, this whole conversation today, it's like if a coach doesn't care about the outcomes that they get with their clients, if they don't care about, the amount of satisfaction that they get from helping other people, reach whatever their goals are, so on and so forth, like I just don't really think it matters, right? So it's like if a coach's end game is like, hey, I need to specify and etch my niche because I need to make $150,000 next year, and that's like their aim, it's like I'm not like cool, right? But like we're talking about something a little bit different than that, right? We're talking about like building something that's going to stick for a long time. And I think those three things, they need to be there for us, right?
Yeah.
Enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love this conversation and I love having the conversation with coaches because it sometimes it's hard to like take yourself out of your own life and like look at it objectively, as if you were watching the story play out. But sometimes it's really helpful to have a conversation with someone else because they're able to help you identify the common threads and the things that you are really good at. So sometimes even asking, your client base or your peers, what are the things that stand out to you about the way in which I support you? Or what do you appreciate the most? Or what's different about working with me compared to working with any other coach that you've worked at in the past? Sometimes just opening up that dialogue is going to bring so much more insight to yourself around, oh, yeah, I am really good at that. I didn't realize I was really good at that. Or maybe
Yeah.
a weakness, right? Oh, I don't love that this client said that I'm not the best communicator, right? Or I wasn't as clear as I could have been on something. So I need to focus more in and work on that more specifically, draw your attention to it. But yeah, I think clarity will always win, especially in a very crowded market. So the clearer we can get and the faster we can get to that clarity, which just means prioritizing the time for it, right? We're so busy in our lives that sometimes we just don't take that time to really reflect. And like we have so much data in front of us with the experiences we've gone through, with the conversations we're having with our clients, but really sit with that. And I think I gave a list of like 10 questions in that last episode that coaches could go through to help gain that clarity. Because sometimes there's like, I don't know where I want to focus. I just enjoy helping people. You
Yeah.
do, and you likely can.
Yeah, so maybe that'll be, what we ask people to do that haven't watched or listened to that last episode. So go back and what number is that,
I'm
Candace?
actually 37, I want to say,
37.
but it's just called Be the Niche's Hero.
Just urge people to go back, listen to that, and hopefully this conversation was at least some value. I enjoyed it. So thanks, Candace.
Yeah.
And we said this last time, but let's do this more often.